Welcome to Issues with Cartoons. I am Kyle.
And I'm Carl.
And this is the show where we dive into animated adaptations of comics and then go back to the source material and look at how these ideas began. And we are continuing our coverage of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes from 2010. This is episode 6, Breakout Part 1. Notable because this is the first non-compilation episode where this is presented to us the same way it was presented when it aired, not mixing and matching minisodes. We are getting a complete, well, almost complete story in one episode. This is also our first two-parter. This is Breakout Part 1, directed by Sebastian Montez, and written by Chris Yost and Josh Fine.
Yeah, no more mini episodes. We're through all the introductions, we're through all the origins, and now we're diving into full-on Avengers action.
Yeah, the stage is set and the play has started. Yeah, for sure. And you had talked about how the compilation episodes were maybe interesting to you, but you were ready to kind of dive into the proper series and see kind of how it's paced.
Yeah, because like the mini episode, the way it's edited, there's certain cuts, and you can tell that that's where they cut it.
It's a little jarring.
And it was intended, yeah, for that. But I was interested in the pacing and how they delivered there, and the formation of the team. Because, you know, we got Thor, and we got Cap, we got Black Panther. Let's see them all come together.
Yeah. This is also the first episode where in the intro with the theme song, when they finish the theme and they show the group shot before they zoom out to the title of the show, they cherry pick the characters that are in that group shot to match the roster of the team in the episode.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and it's something where if you tune out during the intro, like some people do, you might not catch it, but this has Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, Ant-Man, and the Wasp. So it has the founders in that intro.
And when we say founders, we mean this is the original Avengers team.
Right.
As they appear in the comic.
Important to point out, because if you're an MCU fan, you might not realize, or certainly if you are just now tuning into our show, you might not realize that the original lineup of Avengers is different than what you are given in the MCU. Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, Ant-Man, and the Wasp, pretty much as presented here. Maybe notable to say that Ant-Man has not become Giant Man by the time Avengers number 1 rolls around, but
right.
So there's a slight difference in the lineup, I guess. But by any other metric, this is the lineup.
No Cap.
No Cap yet,
as the kids say. No Cap.
Oh man, that aged me terribly, the way I reacted to that. All right, so I've seen this episode. I saw it when it aired. I think I've rewatched it maybe one time since the original airing. This is your first viewing.
Yeah. Just to reiterate, this is my first time watching this show. I have never seen this far. So.
Right, you maybe knew it by reputation.
Yeah, that's about it. Message boards and stuff. People would bring it up. Different Marvel cartoons.
Best of lists and stuff like that.
Exactly. It gets brought up a lot.
So, as someone who was maybe a little back and forth on the pacing of the minisodes, this is the first full episode, though it is a two-parter. What was your feeling about the pacing?
It was better. It felt like an episode of a show, and there wasn't those like strange moments where it clipped off and then something else happened. But I did reflect a lot watching it on how you were talking about in last week's episode, some earlier episodes, about how this was originally supposed to be a Hulk show. And it's very Hulk-centric still in these first two, and I couldn't help but think about that and correlate things.
Yeah, a lot of Hulk rogues show up, and of course Hulk is central to a lot of the plot. And you know, we say that because we know that it was born out of an attempt to make a Hulk show, but when we talk in the second half about Avengers issue 1, Hulk is also a very pivotal part in that whole storyline as well. But yeah, a lot of the centers around the cube. But before we get to the cube, we actually see Iron Man confronting AIM. And I don't think we've seen AIM yet.
Not yet.
But Advanced Idea Mechanics, the little beehive helmet scientists, and they are making a deal with Lucia von Bardis, the Prime Minister of Latveria, and we get some very indirect references to Doctor Doom in an Iron Man scene, which I thought was funny because, of course, Iron Man being associated with Robert Downey Jr., who now is forever going to be associated with Doctor Doom.
Right. It was a cool reference. It made it feel more like the Marvel Universe. You know, we had those little nods to them. And there's more to come.
There's definitely more to come. And honestly, with Marvel villains, you don't get much bigger than Doctor Doom. So to kind of say, like, in minute one, in scene one of your big, what was essentially the premiere episode, to say, like, oh, Doom is around, like, that's a pretty good way to plant your flag in the sand and say, like, we are a version of the Marvel Universe. We got everybody. Lucia von Bardis, by the way, a creation of Bendis and I think it's Gabriel Del Otto from the Secret War miniseries. Did you ever read that? 2004. Not Secret Wars. Not The Secret Wars.
No, Bendis is... I remember it coming out and getting really good reviews at the time for whatever reason.
It's like a painted comic, yeah.
Yeah, it had a cool cover, cool typography. At the time it was... Mm-hmm. This is pre, Hickman's reinvention of Secret Wars. It was notable in that it is the first time that Marvel decided to reuse that name for another miniseries. Great point, yeah. So it's notable in that way. Have I read it? No, I'm sorry.
I read it when it came out. It's good. I think if you go into it expecting it to be anything like any of the other Secret Wars, because there were Secret Wars Part 2, and then the Hickman Secret Wars.
Yeah, later on.
If you expect it to be anything like that, you're going to be very disappointed, because it is not multiversal. It's not even a cosmic story. It's very much an espionage story, but it centers around Latveria, and this character von Bardis, the Prime Minister of Latveria, features pretty heavily in it. But regardless, you get some name drops of Latveria, Doom, and AIM. I half expected MODOK to be the one to come out of that little room, but it was von Bardis instead.
Hasn't MODOK showed up briefly?
We might have seen a cameo, but I don't think MODOK himself has appeared yet. But MODOK is affiliated with AIM, so I assume if we're going to see more AIM, we're going to see more MODOK. MODOK being the big-headed character that you may be familiar with from Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Right.
Or the MODOK cartoon show, which I have not seen.
I haven't seen it either. It was on Hulu for a little bit.
But to your point, showing evidence of kind of a Hulk DNA in this show, we shift to the Cube where we see Absorbing Man, and we see name drops for Stearns, Samuel Stearns, and Emil Blonsky, who are major rogues in the Hulk comics. I like the way that they solved Absorbing Man as a problem for them in a prison, and they have him in a zero gravity chamber, so he can't touch anything.
It's a good idea to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have some kind of answer for a character who can absorb properties of anything he touches. Just don't make him touch anything. And again, we're kind of setting the stage for the big turn in the episode. We're kind of making stops at all the different prisons. Iron Man stops by the vault and talks to Jimmy Woo, who's a major S.H.I.E.L.D. character whose origins date all the way back to the 50s. We see Thor talk to Baldur, and we kind of establish his status quo. It's really kind of a way for, if you didn't tune in online to the minisodes, this will catch you up. Like, Thor's kind of at odds with his dad, who's about to go into Odin's sleep. And we kind of get a sense that Thor doesn't feel like he makes a difference in Asgard, but he thinks he makes a difference on Earth. And he's inspired by people like Jane Foster, who are just normal people who want to make the world a better place.
Jane shows up right after that. I did want to point out that when Bruce is imprisoned, they do talk a little bit about he's trying to find a cure for the Hulk, but then they're like, no, they're actually mining you for DNA for his villains.
Right,
which is a big part of the plot.
Yeah, he's calling BS because Doc Samson is kind of like, no, Bruce, we're here to help you. We all just want to make you feel better. Like, we're trying to improve your life. And he's like, you have to know that's not true. Like,
right.
There's no way. Like, you just take a look around and look at who's here and what they're doing. They're not making anybody better. They're trying to mine them for weapons.
It's a little bit. I think it implies that Abomination is created this way, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, we see Abomination.
We don't see it, but it could be implied that.
Well, and given the timing, again, with Incredible Hulk 2008, the Ed Norton movie.
Right, we want to push those characters.
Right, and given how Emil Blonsky is a soldier working with the Hulkbusters who ends up participating in an experiment related to taking Hulk's blood, I think that's probably a fair guess. I don't know if we ever see.
We don't see it on screen.
We don't. I don't think we will moving forward either. Real quick, I just want Balder shows up.
Right, and have that conversation.
And you sent me a text this week of something that Tom Scioli posted about the Fourth World relating to Balder. Do you want to share that? I just think it's fascinating.
I don't remember exactly, but doesn't it connect Fourth World to Thor mythology?
Yeah, so there was always
Balder?
some tenuous sort of connection between Kirby books, like as he moved to different companies. Like Thor connected some way to the Fourth World, which connected in some ways to Captain Victory and the Galactic Rangers. But in the beginning of the Fourth World, the first page of the Fourth World is Ragnarok. It's the old gods die. And I guess in an interview that Tom Scioli found, Tom Scioli, the author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics graphic novel, which is very good. I guess Kirby says that the progenitor of the Fourth World, the father of the Fourth World, is Balder. And Carnilla, the sorceress, I guess, is the mother from whom all the Fourth World characters kind of come from. And he never makes that explicit in the books itself. But knowing that he was thinking that, and remembering that he was coming up with a bunch of new ideas that he was refusing to share with Marvel because of how he was being treated. And he was deliberately saving them so that he could put them in something that he could have more control and credit over. Knowing that next project that he did, the first project he did when he left Marvel, was the Fourth World. And
it's so interesting that he continued his mythology.
Yeah.
Despite what I got to point out that New Gods is DC.
Yep.
And, Thor, obviously, from what we've been talking about, is Marvel.
Right.
Kirby's continuing his mythology across companies and his career. It's all one story to Kirby.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It's one big mythology.
There are only a few people who are like that. Like we talked about Mantis, the character Mantis. Steve Englehart moved between companies. He went to from Marvel to DC, where he created a character named Willow, who was pretty much Mantis. And then he went to I think Malibu Comics. And I might get the name wrong. I think it was Lorelei was the character he made there, who was essentially the same character as Mantis and Willow. And he continued that narrative on his own, just indirectly. And it sounds like Kirby did something kind of similar, taking advantage of the public domain of mythology. And just, we as readers who know who Kirby is know that he's talking about Marvel Thor when he's talking about the old gods.
Oh, for sure.
And again, and I mentioned this, I think, at the end of last episode, but that alternate universe we could have lived in where Marvel could have just treated Kirby a little better and done some simple things to give us a Marvel version of the Fourth World would have just been fascinating. Anyway, I digress.
It's somewhere in the multiverse. Kirby got to finish it all at one company.
Oh, man. Man, I want to live there. We also go to the big house where Pym is interviewing the Mad Thinker, and he said, hey, we've been listening to you, and last episode you mentioned something about there being a potential incident coming, and we wanted to know what you had to say about that. And, Mad Thinker is difficult to read in that, but Wasp is also talking to Maria Hill, and she catches a glimpse of the Black Widow, and when she asked Maria Hill who is that, Hill says that's classified, and Wasp's answer is, this might be too dramatic for me. And I don't know, Wasp is such a good character. We also see Hawkeye. He's in a cell because he's been framed by the Black Widow.
That's right.
Positioning him kind of similarly to where we meet him in the comics, where he's this misunderstood villain. And then the turn happens, and the power starts to flicker. And we get this crazy sequence where all these different prisons start losing power, and these doors start to open, and it becomes Cameo City.
It's the breakout.
The breakout happens.
It's finally occurring. We get Whiplash.
We get Whiplash, who I didn't recognize at first.
Yeah.
Because they gender swap her. I'm not aware of a female Whiplash. I don't know if there's a woman Whiplash in the comics, but I'm familiar mainly from the 90s Iron Man show. The traditional classic Whiplash.
Doesn't Iron Man immediately respond? I mean, that's like kind of what happens. The power goes out, and then Iron Man is on his way.
He just left the vault.
Yeah,
he just left the vault because he was dropping off the AIM soldiers, the AIM scientists, and then he gets notified by Pepper that the helicarrier is crashing, the cube lost power, and the vault is experiencing a power outage. And so he says, "Okay, check on the helicarrier. I'm going to go back to the vault." And then, chaos pretty much is ensuing this whole episode. But we see Whiplash, Blizzard, Grim Reaper and Strucker show up again. We see the Constrictor, Red Ghost, Griffin, Living Laser, King Cobra. One character I had to look up was the silver and red character who was Chemistro. I'd never heard of him. But, just this mass breakout is happening all across, I guess, America, because they aren't centralized in New York City, but the helicarrier has the big house in it. And not only did these prisoners break out, but they figured a way to expand the big house to make it normal size. And, of course, it's inside the helicarrier floating over New York Harbor. And so it busts out of the sides of the helicarrier and crashes into the river. In a very dramatic fashion.
I really like the moment where Iron Man saw Whiplash and starts attacking Hawkeye. And Hawkeye is just kind of like, I didn't do anything. Again, back to the comic books, it's like he's an anti-hero.
Yeah, and notable, too, that Hawkeye debuted in a Tales of Suspense story as an Iron Man antagonist. Like, Iron Man was the first one he fought.
I didn't realize
so, again,
goes back all the way.
And amazing that they found a way to acknowledge it for fans without making it a distraction for the audience.
It's a quick moment. When I say, like Whiplash and Hawkeye are on screen for a few moments.
Right, but again, Hawkeye's there to help. But when Iron Man gets there, it just looks like Hawkeye's there with the rest of them. So, and he's technically an inmate. He's technically out of his cell. So Iron Man's just like, well, you're part of the problem.
Hulk has a lot of time here, too. You get a great Hulk versus Absorbing Man and Abomination at the same time, which I loved. Yeah, that was one of my favorite moments of this whole episode.
And we also kind of skipped over Doc Samson, who we mentioned earlier, gets exposed to gamma rays.
Yes.
Becoming the green-haired, long-haired, super strong man that I knew from the comics.
We all know.
Right, yeah.
That we all know and adore.
Also, Great Gargoyle, kind of scary in this episode. Like, he's just creeping out of the shadows and turning people into stone. Like, very, very unsettling. I liked it. And then in the middle of all this, like, you just cut to Thor and Jane having brunch at a diner talking about his dad. And she's, like, giving them this pep talk to... help out the family and go to Asgard because Earth will be fine. And right then is when an explosion happens and he realizes that trouble's happening. So he goes off to see what's going on. Was this the episode where Hulk talks to Banner in the diner? Because that I loved. I thought it was... or maybe that was next episode.
That is next episode, but it's early on.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I didn't have it in my notes, but I, for some reason...
It is a great moment. It's kind of the...
So tune in next episode and we'll talk about it.
That's right.
And then we get the raft. And this is the first time... The raft was never seen, I don't think, in any of the mini-sodes. Right? Maybe it was mentioned. But this is the first time we see it... Purple Man is there. Zemo is there.
Jessica Jones villain.
Graviton is there. Purple Man is a scary villain. Played by David Tennant in the Jessica Jones series.
And what a performance.
Oh, amazing. One of the best
Like-
Marvel villains that we don't talk about enough, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree
Incredible
with that.
character, incredible portrayal, and
Fantastic.
actually was a Daredevil villain first. He debuted in like the original Stan Lee, Joe Orlando run of Daredevil from the 60s, but was repurposed in the Alias series by Bendis and
I see.
Gaidos.
He does show up in the X-Men 90s cartoon, which is pretty funny.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he
remember
actually
that.
does show up in an episode.
Oh, that's everyone showed up in that show, man. That was a
yeah,
great
that
show.
was they didn't care about crossovers much. They just went for it.
But notable that Purple Man gets a cameo. I don't think he speaks. He doesn't really do much action, but Purple Man does get highlighted in the Breakout comic that we're going to talk about in the next episode. So it's fitting that he shows up, even if it's just for a moment.
Sure.
Because he is such an important character to the characters in the Breakout story. But man, Purple Man, they should do more Purple Man
we'll
stuff.
talk more about that next week. We're
We
going to
will.
be covering New Avengers.
Zemo, we get, I think, some dialogue. Robert Atkin Downs is the voice. Zemo, we will see a lot more of. He's
I
another,
figured they
yeah.
give him a moment.
Yeah.
When he
Oh,
comes up.
yeah.
He's doesn't he say he's been in there for 6 years?
6 years. Because
Yeah.
the main turn in the episode, what we find out, is the reason all of this is happening is because down in the depths of the raft, I guess several levels below sea level, Graviton
Awaits.
voiced by Fred Tatasciore, who's the voice of the Hulk. So he gets to do some extra work here.
They really build up Graviton. You know, I have a memory of going to the comics store, and it was like when I was 8, and it was like if you had a pull, they had the big back room, and it was all the 50-cent comics, and they were like water damaged or they were excess stuff. So if you can imagine, in the 90s, it was all like Clone Wars, Spider-Man issues, all out of order.
Yeah.
It was like Fantastic Four with Graviton on the cover.
Oh, no way.
And that was one of the ones I grabbed. So, like, one of my early comics was an issue with Graviton in it.
You know, and I was trying to think, it's so funny you bring up your reading history with Graviton, because I don't know. I know who Graviton is. I know he showed up in, I think, the Thunderbolts.
Sure.
But I don't know anything else about him. I don't think he ever showed up in the Perez Busick run that I read. But I'm like aware that he exists. Created by Jim Shooter and I think Sal Buscema, I think was the artist who drew him. But anyway, yeah, Graviton, who features much more heavily in the next episode.
They really present him as a threat.
I know, yeah, and
Like,
honestly,
they build him up.
Yeah,
quite a
they
bit.
really did. They did beef him up in terms of his power level and kind of. He's kind of the big bad of the origin story of the Avengers, which is so interesting that that's who they picked, because he's really, I think, C-list is generous.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. He's an obscure character.
Very
Not
deep
everybody
cut.
knows him.
Very deep
Yeah.
cut, and I respect that. And you know, there's more story to tell, but we kind of leave off where Leader says this is going to work perfectly for his plans, and they're just going to see how it all unfolds, and we're going to stay in the cube because I have ideas, and that's kind of all we get from the Leader. And then the Nick Fury has to deal with this. He wants to deal with himself, so he leaves Maria Hill as acting director, which is how we first meet her in the New Avengers run when she debuts. She's acting director, and so again, like the
Bendis influence is there.
The Bendis influence is all
It's
over this
heavy.
episode.
It's heavy.
Very heavy.
Yeah.
And this is 2010. Bendis was on the Avengers from 2004, I think, until probably 2011 or 2012, I guess.
Wow.
Maybe a little later. He did like a long... in the same breath as like Claremont on X-Men, Bendis on the Avengers, he had that book longer than anyone else. I mean, he left his mark for sure. So yeah,
Dan Slott on Amazing or something.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and honestly, anymore the list gets smaller and smaller of people who have multi-year runs.
Marvel doesn't let you on it that long.
No.
Yeah.
No, they don't. But yeah, we're the characters have not all met yet, but they're about to. And
it's all there.
It's all about to happen and it's all going to center around Graviton. So, any more you want to say? I mean, we're going to get to a lot of the meat of the breakout. In episode 7.
We're going to take a break and talk about Avengers 1.
Right, because this is what it's all been building to on the comics end. We have to.
Right, and then we'll be back next week, true believers, with Breakout Part 2.
Right, we're going to jump to Part 2. All right, well, let's go take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about some Stan Lee Kirby stuff.
Hello, welcome back to Issues with Cartoons, the show where we talk about cartoons and the comic books that inspired them. My name's Carl.
And I'm Kyle.
And we're back to talk about a pivotal issue in the Marvel canon, the Avengers issue 1.
Not even pivotal in Marvel canon, but honestly in pop culture. Given the landscape that we live in now, this is monumentally important.
Earth's mightiest superheroes.
Can the combined power of the Avengers defeat the sinister spells of Loki, god of evil?
The Avengers back! I'll destroy you all!
Loki, prepare for battle. Oh, that's how Thor probably doesn't sound.
I sound like Tom Hiddleston.
That was perfect Tom Hiddleston. And as Tom Hiddleston, being an impressionist that he is, would really admire that, I think. I think he would really respect that you give it a shot.
Now,
this was a book that I've read multiple times. I'm sure you have too.
I have. I had a reprint when I was younger, and I reread it multiple times. This is maybe, we were talking before we started recording, this is maybe my 3rd or 4th time reading this.
They would reprint this in the back of different Avengers comics. Yes. They would reprint this in Masterworks, omnibuses, hardcovers. I read it, I think, first in the Essentials format that we talked about. So honestly, reading it in color is relatively new to me. I mean, I've read it in color before, but not as many times as I almost read the cover off of those Essential books. But I mean, this is what we've been building to for the last 6 episodes, or last 5 episodes. We've been covering all these characters individually, much as readers back in the 60s experienced it, and now we are here where they all come together. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby on creative duties with Dick Ayers, and this Sam Rosen on lettering, and Martin Goodman, the publisher of Marvel Comics, first Timely, then Atlas, and now Marvel, had been kind of pushing Stan Lee, his cousin or nephew or however they were related,
for a Justice League.
He wanted a Justice League ripoff because he saw that National DC Comics had been putting together a collection of their superheroes into one book, and it was selling like crazy. And that was the book that he pushed on Stan when he created Fantastic Four. He said, give me a team book. Yeah. And Stan was like, well, if I want to do a team book, I'm going to do it my way. Jack, what ideas do you have? And so they made So they made the Fantastic Four. And that was in 1961. Well, 2 years later, in September of 1963, they did actually followed the formula as DC had done. Taking characters they had introduced in their own books, bringing them together into one umbrella. And the Avengers were born.
One of the things I love about rereading these issues, these older issues from the 60s, is they're book-length super epics. Because like a lot of the earlier books were like anthologies, you know? Right. They were like 10-page stories, 13-page stories. And then like it was a big deal to get a big 22-page comic.
And you feel that when you read this, like the way we've been covering this, where we've been reading, we read Tales of Suspense, we read Journey into Mystery, we read Tales to Astonish. Other than the Incredible Hulk issue we covered, I think this is the first time we're covering a full-length epic, right? Like, I guess Tales to Astonish 44 with the Wasp was maybe close. I think that one was 18 pages.
It was close.
Yeah, and honestly, you read it and it adds to the gravitas. It adds to the epicness of all these different colorful characters coming together. I love this opening splash with that profile of Loki.
Yeah.
And you see the little sidebar with these little caricatures of the Avengers. It's so...
It pops.
It really does pop.
Great.
It looks... I don't know what I want. If I want like a poster or a bookmark would be freaking cool.
I want to steal it and put it in my comics.
I want to steal this, and others have, and I'd be interested to know what Justice League books looked like in 1963 to see if this is something that they borrowed from that book. But it really does excite you because you know these characters now, and here they all are, and you see them next to each other.
They're together.
That ensemble just looks so good together. Even the color combinations, they all kind of marry together well. And Hulk appropriately doesn't fit the color palette. And I think that honestly works in the favor of, it's almost like a story reason where like he's definitely kind of the outsider of this group of like disparate heroes.
I don't know why, but I really like Iron Man in his yellow armor.
I've always
liked that.
We talked about this. We talked about this with the first episode when we were talking about that bulky armor. Yeah, it is a weird look because we're used to kind of that Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man look, or I think it might have been Ditko who did the golden and red look.
It doesn't show up long after this.
But this
we get it shortly.
This reads vintage. This reads classic. This reads like of a bygone era of superhero comics where like if you introduced a character that looked like this, I don't know if it would play as well to audiences as it did back in 1963. Yeah. But even down to the lettering of the character names, it really does just give me this creative inspiration that I just, like you say, I just want to use this.
It's great.
Really, really great.
You don't see this anymore.
I know.
Yeah, you just don't see it anymore.
You don't, and it's very comic booky. It's very pop art, like you say. And this group of characters, I was reminded while I was reading this, I can't cite where this was said, but I remember in 2012 when Joss Whedon was promoting Avengers.
Okay.
He was talking about the ensemble. He was talking about the core group. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about when he was writing the screenplay, what was kind of his thought process. And he talked about how in the 60s, you had the X-Men were positioned as the outsider group. But here they are with these clean-cut kids in these matching uniforms who all had a similar origin. And meanwhile, the real oddballs was this weird collection of, you had a Norse god, you had a tech mech guy, you had these bug people, and then you had this monster character who were all kind of coming together as a group, and they look visually very kind of disparate and very hodgepodge, but coming together and then coalescing into a team and having to overcome their differences. I just remember thinking that was a really interesting read on this group that kind of makes sense to me. But anyway, maybe that's just me.
It's classic.
For sure. So this is the first of a star-studded series of book-length epics. We meet Loki in the Isle of Silence, which, if you'll recall from the Thor episode of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, is where we left Loki at the end. That was his punishment, was to go to the Isle of Silence.
In that tree.
Yep.
Go sit in the tree, Loki. You're punished.
Interestingly, though, this is the Isle of Silence, and Loki doesn't shut up for this whole book.
That's right. It's all Loki at the beginning here.
Yeah, he's
Loki scheming,
Loki
plotting. And we almost have like a 6-panel grid that, Kirby would be known for, except for the 3 panels
that
at the
bottom tier.
Yeah, that bottom tier could be 9-panel grid.
Yeah, but he's checking in on Thor, sending his thought projection to see what's going on, and he sees Dr. Don Blake, and he's he's found Don Blake, but he doesn't want to do anything to him because it would be a hollow victory to take out Don Blake.
Yeah, he's lame, according to Loki.
He's lame, which, of course, is referring to his limp, but also, maybe he's making fun of him, calling him a lame dude.
It would be a hollow victory.
Yep, and so he's trying to think of a way to draw Thor out into the open. And he's looking around and he sees...
What do you know?
A figure who... Is he flying through the air? No! He's covering the area in fantastic, powerful leaps. It is the Incredible Hulk. Really like, by the way, the face on the Hulk in that last panel. I love Kirby's...
His eyes are in shadow, and it works well. Yeah. Gives the impression of that big forehead.
That big, prominent forehead is very Kirby.
Kirby's good at making these characters look distinctive from each other.
Yeah, honestly.
He never draws, same face. They all look very distinct.
Yes, for sure. And master of silhouettes. I mean, honestly, it makes sense that he ended up in animation doing character designs later, because his character designs are... incredible. So many of them last even to this day. So Loki wants to cause some mischief, as he wants to do, so he creates an illusion of a bundle of dynamite on railroad tracks.
Just hacking this train that's passing by.
And Hulk sees it and he wants to stop it, so he goes to get it, but before he realizes it's a mirage, he crashes into the train tracks. And he ends up pulling a Chris Reeve from the Donner Superman movie and lifts the train tracks over his head to let the train pass. But it's too late. The train conductor saw the Hulk. He assumes the Hulk is the one who caused the train tracks to crumble. And that becomes the story.
I do want to go back to page 3 on that second panel. I love that shot of Loki's manipulating things from afar, but we have this image of Loki drawn larger, and he's the size of the sky, and Hulk's
great call out.
That's really conveys the scene well.
It's a good way of using the visuals to convey something that isn't literal,
right?
To make a figurative statement with the art. Really good point. And really, really impressed. I mean, I say this about a lot of Kirby drawings, but if you blew up that drawing and made it
a cover,
or I was even going to say a gallery piece,
which Marvel does,
people would stop in their tracks and stare at it.
Yeah, it's great.
And so
back to the train.
Yeah, the City News has released Hulk in attack on train. The nation is shocked, and the army is going to mobilize to stop the Hulk because he knocked over some train tracks. And we get a reappearance of Rick Jones, who we've covered for his appearance in The Incredible Hulk, and he's still around. And he's hanging out with a bunch of teenagers, the Teen Brigade, a group of youthful radio ham enthusiasts.
Yeah, and they mentioned the Fantastic Four. They got to reach out to the superheroes of the Marvel Universe. So, Team Brigade sends out this message to kind of try to intercept Hulk.
Right, and so at this point in Marvel canon, the first time any heroes had crossed over was, I think, in Fantastic Four. Was it issue 12 when the Hulk shows up? Or maybe it was 12 or 13. Regardless, early in the Fantastic Four run, the Hulk shows up in the Fantastic Four book. So they've already had a connection. There have already been interactions with those characters. So Rick's like, well, the Fantastic Four will be who we call. They're the preeminent group in the Marvel Universe at this point.
Right.
And Loki doesn't want to deal with the Fantastic Four. He wants Thor. So exclusively. Whoops, by the way, Loki, you messed that up, bud. So he diverts the radio waves to a different wavelength so that it doesn't hit the Fantastic Four. It hits the radio that Don Blake is listening to. And so he taps his hammer and transforms into Thor. Not realizing that by changing the wavelength, Don Blake is not the only one listening to that wavelength. Also, Ant-Man and the Wasp are listening to that wavelength.
And they're ready to arrive. They're ready to fly on some ants and get over there.
Yeah, they ski on some ants, which if we can just go back real quick to talking about Hank Pym being kind of a jerk in the original Marvel Comics when he's saying, I can't see why you have to stop and powder your nose every time we have a mission, Jan. And he tells her to be quiet and just, unlikable. I still don't know what Jan sees in him in comic book Hank. I maintain my position that Earth's Mightiest Heroes improves on that character. But yeah, he doesn't want Jan to fly. He wants her to ski on some ants because it'll save her energy because they have a long way to travel. By the way, we are reading on Marvel Unlimited the facsimile edition.
That's right.
Which that's not how I read it in preparation for this, but Carl alerted me to the fact that the facsimile edition on Marvel Unlimited includes the original ads.
That's right, and that's why I love the facsimile editions, and Marvel keep making them because I love them.
Carl, when they make the facsimile editions for Marvel, do they approximate the newsprint tint to the pages, or is it on white paper?
Oh no, it's on newer paper.
Marvel, you can use newer paper. Put a paper filter on the art because these colors were made for newsprint. Anyway,
we could have a whole discussion about that if you want to go down there.
It's such a nitpick, but it does look better on newsprint. We cut then to Iron Man. Anthony Stark. They're still not calling. I wonder when they call him Tony for the first time.
I was wondering that too. I had the same thought reading
so
this.
Funny.
I was like, yep, he's still Anthony.
Anthony. So Anthony's here, the millionaire industrialist and playboy.
And he slips on his Iron Man costume like a pair of sleeves.
I know. Well, and I mentioned this when we covered this in the first episode, but that chest plate he wears all the time, much like the little heart apparatus he has in the movies.
Yeah,
he wears this torso all the time because that's what's saving his heart.
That's right.
So it's so funny they call him this industrialist and playboy because it's just this guy walking around with this bulky armor underneath tuxedos and business ties and stuff like that. I just always thought it was so funny. But he takes off in this scene where he dresses himself with his sleeves and his leg pants and that skirt.
Now we got a crazy cameo at the bottom of this page coming at you from Yancey Street.
Yancey! Phooey! Phooey, Grimm says. Did you know, by the way, I didn't know this, Ben Grimm is named after Kirby's dad?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
That's great.
Tom Scioli's Epic Life of the King of Comics, the Jack Kirby biography, worth a read. Fantastic Four managed to get the radio signal and respond to the Team Brigade, but they're busy anyway.
They're building Reed's machines right now.
Sorry, guys, we can't help you. We're busy. I do love that the Fantastic Four show up because it reminds you, like, right now you think this is the main team of the Marvel Universe, but wait until you see what's coming. And I've said this before. I'm a big Mike Allred fan. And whenever I see Kirby draw certain panels of the Fantastic Four, I can just tell that Mike Allred must have poured over Kirby Fantastic Four comics.
So, something I do want to bring up is that would Amazing Spider-Man #1 have come out by now? Or this is pre that? Because the Fantastic Four show up in Amazing Spider-Man #1, that's the side story. They have the first story with Fantastic Four.
Isn't that interesting? So a lot of their
Chameleon appears as well.
A lot of their tentpole comics feature their Fantastic. That just tells you how popular the Fantastic Four were.
Sure.
Like they were the little cameo appearance that they put into all of their big debut comics. I am looking it up as we talk. So. It was in 1963. They were both in 1963.
So they're within the same year on this.
Within the same year. I'm trying to find a month, though. So Avengers #1 was September. And Amazing Spider-Man #1 was in... Oh, this is going to take me a minute, Carl.
I'm sorry.
We go. March. So... Oh, no. Release date December 1962. So it was actually...
Before.
9 months... 10 months before... Avengers.
So there might have been a little bit of, we put Fantastic Four in with Spider-Man. Let's
Great
put them
point.
in with Avengers.
Yeah, that worked out really well when we did it with Spider-Man. He's now one of our biggest characters. Let's go throw him in. That's a great point.
To connect it.
And of course, they didn't do that with X-Men #1, and look what happened. So anyway,
Don't rip on X-Men.
no, they ended up being very successful. They just had a hard time starting.
It took them a while. It took them longer, certainly.
Can you tell I'm an Avengers fan?
It certainly took longer for the X-Men to take off, but that wasn't until Chris Claremont came along.
Right. Yeah, we'll cover some X-Men. I know we'll cover
Someday.
Someday. Yeah. There is an end to Earth's Mightiest Heroes. So anyway, right after they hang up with the Fantastic Four, conveniently, just as their hopes are dashed that they're going to get any help, Thor shows up. But wait, not just Thor. Iron Man shows up at the same time.
That's right.
And they're right over their shoulder. They say, look, flying above us, Ant-Man and the Wasp. So they get in front of a projector, mess with the settings on this person's projector, and project themselves onto the wall. Because why waste the Pym particles to grow to normal size when they can
it's the most practical way to let someone know you're in the room when you're small, too. Just grab a projector and show yourself.
Yeah, you don't need to do anything else. And again, this just goes back to when we talked about Tales to Astonish. Any excuse to stay small, Hank Pym will take that excuse. And he will do the absolute most convoluted way to solve a problem that you could have done in normal size. As long as he gets to stay small. Loki's not happy. He gives you a bah, and frustrated that this has now become more complicated and other characters are involved. So he's going to draw Thor away from this collection because we have most of the founders together for the first time on page 7. Everyone but the Hulk is there. So he's going to project an image that only Thor can see, and Thor's going to ignore everyone else in the room. No need to bother them with this. He's just going to take care of it himself. He's going to fly away. And then quickly learns that the Hulk he's following is, in fact, an illusion. And so he's going to go to Asgard because he knows exactly who would pull a trick like this on him. He's going to go talk to Loki.
He immediately knows it's Loki.
Immediately knows it's Loki.
He's like, oh, my hammer didn't work? Loki.
Had to be Loki. Had to be Loki. No one else.
That's what I do when I can't get a nail on the wall. You know, I'm just like,
Loki. Man. I bet growing up with Loki was frustrating.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I would have beat him up.
Yeah.
If I was his brother, I would have beat him up.
Yeah. And look,
I would have taken him down to Yancey Street and shown him how to fight.
Right, yeah. You would have started Ragnarok over that brotherhood. In this really good... I love this panel of Iron Man and Rick, actually. It's so tiny, but I actually love the composition and posing of that. Because, you get these big Stan Lee dialogue bubbles and captions and stuff, but I feel like Kirby composes around them pretty well. But, Carl, we need to talk about the last panel on page 9.
Oh, God.
It's incredible.
This is my... This is my biggest gripe with the issue is Hulk in the circus. I didn't care for it.
No, man. This is the reason you buy the issue. You get Hulk in a clown costume, and they call him Meccano the robot that they just happen to find, and they're like, oh, it's a robot. So the Hulk put makeup on and pretended to be a robot, and they believed him?
The marvel of the age. So the real Hulk, not the illusion, is working in a circus, and he's full blown, and he's flipping around an elephant. Yeah,
an elephant, a horse, and a seal, which
he's juggling a seal.
Made sense. The other ones made sense, but the seal, that seal couldn't be having a good time.
It looks like it passed away a while ago.
I know. Oh no! Oh, the first casualty of Avengers, the comics. That poor baby seal. But Carl, you know this about me. I like the circus. I have a comic featuring a strong man in the circus who happens to be a grizzly bear.
Cornelius.
Big fan of circuses, and I do appreciate the circus iconography we get here. He just gives you the bare minimum that you need to know that you're at a circus. Just a couple of stars, a couple of balloons, some masts, a few animals thrown in there. And luckily, one of the attendants of this circus is a little ant. And Ant-Man, one of his army of ants, recons and relays back to Ant-Man that the Hulk is at the circus.
It could be that he's been investigating this for a while with this ant. He's like, this ant, let me know, in the local circus, it could be the Hulk.
I love that it's the local circus.
Yeah.
I love that he's so close and nearby. That he's just around the corner in the big top.
So Ant-Man, when he's out flying around with the Wasp, likes to frequent his local circus and go check out this creature that could possibly be the Hulk.
Right, this robot that moves like a man because it is actually a man and not a robot. I just think it's hilarious. In 1963, anyone thought that robot... Anyway, I digress again.
So preposterous.
I gotta say, I do appreciate the inventive use of making Ant-Man the one who goes after Hulk first in a really creative way.
Sure.
By having the ants burrow beneath him and get him to basically fall into the ground and immobilize him for a minute. I thought that was a really creative solution. Hulk obviously deals with it very quickly. But I like that Ant-Man is the first one to go after him. The tiniest one goes after the strongest one.
Yeah.
So anyway, they end up putting a like a steel silo around him, a steel cylinder.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it.
To trap him. We do get some good. I'm a big fan of when they show Ant-Man next to normal-sized objects, and we do see him next to this microphone in a very good shot. And the crowd is eating this all up. This is the best Duran act I ever saw. That big robot has the disposition of my brother-in-law, which is the most Stanley dialogue I've ever heard.
Yeah, for
how
sure.
do they ever dream these things up? Again, just the crowd, just a bunch of suckers, just a bunch of rubes, as they say in the circus. And so he wipes off his makeup, tears off his circus outfit, and he's the Hulk. And then
Hulk is full-blown talking in this issue, too, which I want to bring up.
I love that.
I do want to bring that up.
Yeah, and kind of makes sense when he's very much the Earth's Mightiest Heroes Hulk. Like,
yeah, he can speak.
Speaking in full sentences, he's got this gruff demeanor. Kind of the Wolverine of the group before Wolverine was even around.
You could say.
Yeah. And of course, Wolverine debuts in a Hulk issue. But yeah, he's just not here for it. And but he's very eloquent compared to other kind of caveman talk Hulk that we kind of typically associate with him. And so then he uses a bellows to dispatch Ant-Man and Wasp, and then Iron Man steps in, and I think the thing to notice is no one is working together yet. They're all kind of taking their own shots by themselves. And it's not working. There's great ads in this, man. The
facsimiles are fun. See, this is why I like them,
Disney
Kyle.
World.
This is why I like them, because they have all the funny ads in them.
Fine, I'll start reading facsimiles digitally. It just didn't make sense why at first.
Look at this on sale now, Strange Tales, and you have like Spider-Man without the spider on his chest,
right,
with Human Torch. Like, it's fun, man.
It is fun. I enjoy this.
It's fun.
So Iron Man's not having much luck against the Hulk. He's flying after him, and Hulk just kind of does a quick dive to the ground, so he overshoots the Hulk, and Hulk just comes back and grabs him from behind and puts him into the ground.
Hulk's not having an issue with any of them. I mean, he catches Wasp with his bare hand.
Right.
I mean, he's not having a problem with any of them.
And so we cut back to Asgard, where Thor says, Father, Odin, just give me permission to go talk to Loki on the Isle of Silence. I know he's responsible for all the mischief going on. And Odin says, you have my permission, but Loki's my son too. So I'm not going to help you if Loki does something dirty to you, because I can't pick sides in your guys' fight.
Like any good father would.
Like any good father would. Solve it amongst yourselves, no matter who's in the wrong.
That's right.
Beautiful panel of Thor on this boat going down the river to the Isle of Silence, where he gets trapped in a tree. Luckily, though, Mjolnir is able to get him out of there. Or I guess it's the Uru hammer. They haven't named it Mjolnir yet. They didn't know that was the name.
He refers to it as his hammer throughout.
Right. Yeah, you're never going to name... I wonder what issue Mjolnir gets named. And then you get this another beautiful panel, man, of him sailing to this volcano with some Kirby dots for waves. And
that shouldn't work, but it does.
It really does. Like as an effect, it works great. And these volcanic I can't even say it, Carl. Volcanic gas globules explode out of this volcano and attack him and send him underwater, and Thor's able to get out and confront Loki. But that was Loki's plan the whole time. Because then the Silent Ones, for whom the Isle of Silence is named, it's not the Isle of Silence because you have to be quiet. It's because the Silent Ones are there. And this creepy looking dude pops out from the ground.
It's an excellent 9-panel grid.
Really good 9-panel grid.
Beautiful.
Honestly, it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
And that gnarly hand coming up is a really good... We talk a lot about page turns in comics. Like, what a good incentive to turn the page.
Yeah, no, it's perfect.
Or
it's
to go to the
very
next
last
page.
one.
Like that.
That's a good point.
That hand coming up, grabbing you. A silhouette panel right before it that's just really, really good looking.
Wally Wood would be proud.
Wally Wood would be. Yeah, he would be proud. Yeah, I see your 22 panels chart back there in your office, buddy. But look at this gnarly design. Again, Kirby loves his big-headed monsters. And this added, like, the hairiness and the really long fingers and these big feet and these really tiny, skinny legs.
It's not like the other Kirby monsters. It's almost like more towards, like, Jim Henson than it is, like,
I see
kaiju. It's like some of the Kirby monsters in Fantastic Four look like kaijus and stuff.
Yes.
Like this looks like Jim Henson's Dark Crystal or something.
I definitely see there's some shared... That's a really good connection. I think that's really apt. Yeah.
It's disturbing. It's more disturbing than it is like...
It is. It's unsettling to look at. Yeah. It's not like a cool monster. It's a creepy monster.
It is.
And that panel of him being dragged underground, horrifying.
I love the shot he did in that first panel of like Loki standing triumphantly, gloating with his fist in the air while the monsters... That's a lot of information to convey in one panel, and Kirby does it well.
And honestly... To that point, the last panel on this page where Thor swipes at the illusion of Loki and Loki's behind him, gloating again. You get a lot of action in that one panel. Kirby knew what he was doing, man. 1963 Kirby, we're firing. We're firing on all cylinders. This man knew how to make comics.
There's no stopping it.
There's an ad for the Fantastic Four annual #1 in here, Carl. Just what a time and place, man.
Spider-Man waits within these pages.
Oh my gosh, with the Gallery of Villains. Oh, I want to read that issue again.
Right.
So then Loki pulls some more shenanigans, and there's just... He makes duplicates of himself.
I love that.
Really classic kind of illusionist trick that Thor solves by making like a propeller with his hammer to blow away the facsimiles. And then the real one is the one who grabs
onto the tree, and the rest of them dissolve.
And in true comic book logic fashion, he rubs his enchanted hammer on the ground to soak up the magnetic currents that give life to the trolls below.
Some Star Trek logic.
Magnetize his hammer and attaches Loki to his hammer and flies away with him. Which, if you remember the first appearance of Loki... The way that story ended, he attaches Loki to his hammer and then throws the hammer to Asgard.
Right.
So Loki just gets hitched to Mjolnir a whole lot in these early 60s comics.
Yeah.
But we still have the Hulk to deal with.
Thor's advantage.
Loki's handled, but we still have this Hulk problem.
Hulk is loose still. Very much so.
Yep. So he goes to an auto factory. Where they start throwing tires at the Hulk.
And now Iron Man gets his moment to battle Hulk.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, he's going to try again. So he makes a grapple. And I've always loved this. First of all, this panel of... This sequence of Hulk pulling back this basically slingshot that he makes.
Yeah, yeah.
And drives this gear into Iron Man with really good...
It's really dynamic.
Really good dynamism, really good motion. You really sense the crumbling of that cylinder that hits him. And then he throws this grapple and he goes through a wall. And then Thor shows up with Loki to say, hold on, we have no reason to fight. The problem is solved. It was all Loki's fault. And so Loki makes himself radioactive. This is maybe the goofiest part of the whole issue. He makes himself radioactive, and Ant-Man pulls a trap door. Are we still in the auto factory at this point? Are there trap doors in auto factories?
Ant-Man will find a way.
Ant-Man found a trap door at this auto factory. Not only did he find a trap door, but below the trap door, conveniently, is a sealed chamber door that is a lead-lined tank for the radioactive Loki to be imprisoned in.
Loki's very happy about making himself radioactive, too.
He's
like, I'm radioactive now. You can't stop me.
I'll give you 10 seconds to leave, he says.
Yeah. He's like, you're done. I'm radioactive now. You can't touch me.
If you remain, you are doomed. Really good coloring, though, I'll say. Very effective coloring.
Yeah.
So anyway, the problem is solved because Thor stopped the squabbling between Hulk and Iron Man and brings Loki, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp subdue Loki and put him away.
And they don't really do much throughout the actual conflict of the issue. This is like Ant-Man and Wasp's
this is their moment. That's their moment.
Is imprisoning him in the lead prison.
Yeah, you had that moment where he was trying to talk the Hulk down at the beginning.
That's it, really.
And really, from there, they were pretty much just along for the ride until the very end. And so, before they go their separate ways, Ant-Man is the one to tell them to stop, which I thought was interesting. So, wait. Before we all separate, Wasp and I think we should stay together as a team, because we would be unbeatable. And the Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor all agree Hulk is tired of being picked on. He'd rather be with them than against them, because he doesn't want anyone to chase him anymore. And Wasp is the one who comes up with the name of the Avengers, which is a fact to keep in mind for the next episode. And the Avengers are born. And thus is born one of the greatest superhero teams of all time, powerful, unpredictable, brought together by a strange quirk of fate. The Avengers are on the march, and a new dimension is added to the Marvel galaxy of stars. And that last panel is iconic with all of them together.
But, Hulk is still uncomfortable and his arms are crossed. Hulk's characterization remains.
Absolutely.
Despite being on a team, Hulk is just so sick of being hunted, he'd rather be on a team.
Yeah, that's a very poor motion to be in the group, honestly. But
but we'll see more about that later.
Great writing motivation, I'm saying, for him. You should maybe make your decisions based on other things. But great issue, classic issue.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Issue,
this is the first appearance of Avengers.
Yeah.
I'm
just staring at that last panel. And again, going back to the color theory of it all. Red and blue, yellow and blue, red, yellow, and blue, all some sort of combination of those primary colors, and then you have the Hulk with these secondary colors, and he's just the misfit. He's the one who doesn't belong, and it's just so appropriate. And yeah, that brings us to the end. Man, they put a lot of ads at the back of Avengers #1 when in 1963.
They sure did. They were trying to sell some products. You got toy soldiers. You got auto repair.
You can learn how to hypnotize very easily.
That's right. You can hypnotize your friends if you want to. That's what I mean. Any more thoughts on Avengers #1, Kyle?
No, I'm glad we spent the amount of time we did covering this because it is important. It did feel, I loved reading all those individual issues and then reading this issue because you really felt that coming together moment.
Yeah, them assembling the team and stuff, yeah. And where else are you going to get Hulk dressed as a clown?
I mean, not enough other places, I think. I think we need more Clown Hulk. And I'm glad you liked it as much as I did. Any final thoughts from you, Carl?
I don't have any. A lot of fun revisiting this. I'm glad I could read it one more time as an adult. It's maybe been 10 years since I read it, so it was certainly fun to go back and visit. Kyle, anything you want to plug before we go?
Ko-fi.com/kylewindle for the aforementioned Circus Bear Strongman Cornelius Armstrong Adventures and Antics. I also have Thunder Duck And Mad Science Rejects, my 2 mini comics available there. I'm also available for commissions there. Carl, what about you?
Go to www.carllucasdraws.com, where I have my book Shogun Bear and the House of Horrors and mini comics like Captain Devil. You can catch me at Genghis Khan in Cleveland, Ohio at the Pivot Arts Center. I'll be there in December.
Carl and I first bonded because we both had comics with bears as the star, and that's
true.
It is true. For the show, contact at IssuesWithCartoons.com. We are also on Issues with Cartoons at Instagram, IssuesWCartoons on Twitter, and of course follow us on YouTube, subscribe, follow us on various podcasting platforms, and tell people about us. If you know people who like Earth's Mightiest Heroes or are Avengers fans or animation fans, I hope you come along for the ride. I hope you're watching this with us and reading along with us. But if you're not, I hope you're enjoying the discussion because we sure are.
That's right. And we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, we're going to finish this breakout and find out what happens next episode. See you then.